She laughed when my son found his cake in the trash. She stopped laughing on her wedding day. I found my son's birthday cake in the trash. Not knocked over. Not dropped by accident. It was sitting upright in a black garbage bag near the kitchen door. Used napkins stacked on top of it. The T-Rex figure was still standing. The green frosting was still perfect. Ethan's name was still spelled out in blue letters. I stood in that kitchen for a long moment. Completely still. When I walked back out, my sister Rachel was watching me from across the room. She knew what I had just found. And she smiled. My family had a word for people like me. The safety net. The one who absorbs things quietly, adjusts, and never makes it worse. I had spent my entire adult life filling that role. Looking at that garbage bag, something in me went very quiet. That was when I started counting. I should back up a little. I'm the younger of two. Rachel is 4 years older, and from the time we were kids, the family organized itself around her. Not overtly nothing my parents would ever admit to, but the pattern was there if you knew how to read it. When Rachel turned 18, my parents quietly drew from a family savings fund to cover her college application costs, her dorm supplies, her spring trips. When I turned 18, my father sat me down and said, "We know you'll figure it out." I figured it out. I worked 2 jobs through school, took out loans, paid them back. Our parents called it character building. By the time Rachel announced her engagement, she was in her early 30s and had never fully paid her own rent. She called her arrangement with our parents' family resources. My parents had started referring to what I earned as something the family could lean on when needed. I heard it in the way my mother mentioned my stable income at dinners. I saw it in the way nobody asked before assuming. My family had a word for what I was. They called it being a team player. I had a different word for it, but I kept it to myself. When Ethan was born, I made one decision I was absolutely certain about. I opened a college savings account for him at the same bank my parents had used for 30 years. The branch manager suggested listing emergency contacts on the account, standard procedure, he said. My parents were the obvious choice. They were his grandparents. It seemed like a formality at the time. I set up an automatic deposit of $600 on the first of every month. For 5 years, I didn't miss one. By the week of Ethan's birthday party, that account held $38,000. Ethan's money was Ethan's money. That was the one rule I never thought I'd have to enforce. Ethan had been talking about the cake for 3 weeks. Specifically, the T-Rex on top. He'd seen it in a bakery window and decided with the full conviction of a 5-year-old that it was going to be his birthday cake. I drove 40 minutes to pick it up that morning. 3 tiers, green frosting, happy birthday. Ethan in blue letters and a plastic T-Rex planted on top like it was guarding the whole thing. The party started right. His preschool friends came with their parents. A few of my own friends. The apartment was loud in the way birthday parties are supposed to be loud. A good loud. Rachel and my parents arrived about an hour in. I felt the room shift before I could explain why. The second Rachel walked through the door. Her eyes moved across the space, scanning, assessing. Ethan ran straight to her, grabbed her hand, and pointed at the cake. He started telling her the T-Rex's name. He'd already changed it twice that morning. The last time I saw the cake on the table, he was still explaining it to anyone who would listen. 30 minutes later, I went to the kitchen to check on the food. The cake was in a black garbage bag near the service door. Not knocked over. Not on the floor. Placed there. It was sitting upright inside the bag, the T-Rex still standing on top, the blue frosting letters still readable. Used paper plates and napkins had been stacked around it and on top of it. Like it was something to be cleared. Like it was done. I stood there for a long moment. The noise from the party was audible through the door. Kids laughing, someone yelling something about the balloons. I looked around the kitchen. Nobody in there with me. I carried that image back into the party because I couldn't explain it away. My brain kept searching for an innocent version of events and not finding one. Accidents leave messes. This was tidy. I found Rachel before I was even looking for her. She was already watching me from across the room. She had a specific look on her face, the one she gets when she's made a decision and is waiting to see how the other person handles it. A slow, patient smile. I kept my voice low. I asked her what happened to the cake. It was in the way, she said. I had the caterers move it. I asked where they moved it. I didn't ask. A slight shrug. I waited. It was just a cake, she said. You can order another one. Ethan won't even remember. My parents were standing 3 feet away. Neither of them said a word. I told everyone it was time to head out. Rachel picked up her bag. At the door, she turned back like she'd almost forgotten something. You're still coming to the pre-wedding dinner next Saturday, right? We need you to cover the venue deposit. Just the first payment. I didn't say anything. I closed the door behind her. That evening, the first text arrived. Rachel sent 4 texts that night. The first arrived at 9:17 p.m. Pay the venue or don't bother coming. The second came 11 minutes later. Mom and Dad already said you have the money. The third followed 2 hours after that longer. This is a family event. Family resources are family resources. I don't understand why you're making this so difficult when you know how important this is. The fourth was a screenshot the venue's payment portal total highlighted in yellow, $4,800. Beneath it, 3 words. First payment, due Friday. I sat at the kitchen table and read all 4 of them. Ethan was asleep down the hall. The apartment was quiet. I read through them twice slowly, like I was looking for something I'd missed. Then I put the phone face down on the table and sat with the quiet for a while. I didn't type a single word back, but I saved every single one. My mother called the next morning. "You're being too sensitive about the cake thing," she said. "It was just an accident. Nobody meant anything by it. You know how it is at these events, things get moved around." I didn't argue. There wasn't a version of that conversation where pushing back would lead anywhere useful. My father called that afternoon. He had a different approach, more direct. He skipped the reassurances entirely. "Rachel's been planning this for 2 years," he said. "She just needs that first deposit covered. You have the stability right now. Just be the bigger person on this one. Be the bigger person." I had been hearing that phrase my entire life. In our family, it had one very specific function. It meant absorb the cost. Carry the weight. Do it quietly, so nobody else has to feel it. I said I'm not going to pay for the venue. Once. No explanation, no list of reasons. My family had a way of turning reasons into negotiating points, and I wasn't interested in negotiating. My father went quiet. Then we'll find another way. The call lasted 4 minutes and 20 seconds. I know because I checked the log afterward, and I'm not completely sure why I did that. Maybe some part of me was already starting to document things before I fully understood what I was documenting. I didn't know yet what another way meant. 3 weeks later, I found out. 3 weeks after the party, my phone rang at 2:15 on a Tuesday afternoon. It was the preschool principal. She was calm but careful with her words. The kind of calm that means someone is trying not to alarm you before they have all the facts. She told me my parents had arrived at the school that afternoon and informed the front desk they were authorized to pick up Ethan early. They had given their names. Their names were on the emergency contact list. What they were not on was the authorized pickup list. The principal had intercepted them in the front hallway before they reached Ethan's classroom. She called me immediately. I was in my car in 11 minutes. When I pulled into the lot, my parents were still there, my father looking at his phone, my mother standing near the building entrance with her arms crossed. They didn't come toward me. I didn't go toward them. I went inside and got Ethan. He came running over with his backpack half open and one shoe loosely tied. In the car, he asked why Grandma and Grandpa were outside. I told him they just wanted to say hi. That night, I sent the principal a single email: "Please do not release my son to anyone except me. Written documentation will follow." She replied within the hour, confirming the policy had been updated on his file. Then I opened my banking app. For the first time in 2 weeks, the world went very quiet. I sat with what I was looking at for a long time before I did anything else. I didn't call my parents. I didn't text Rachel. I just sat at the kitchen table while Ethan watched something in the next room, and I thought very carefully about what I was going to do next. At 7:43 that evening, 4 photos arrived in the family group chat. Rachel in different wedding dresses with the caption, "Which one?" She sent them to the same group that included me. She did not mention the preschool. She did not mention the bank account. As far as her messages were concerned, everything was fine, and the only question worth asking was which dress made her look better. I left the group chat without responding. About an hour later, a mutual acquaintance, a woman I knew through work who did floral arrangements for events, sent me a private message. She'd been called in to consult on Rachel's wedding. She said things were not going well. Rachel had reduced 3 vendors to tiers and back-to-back consultations. The venue, she said, was tense. She thought I should know. I saved everything. Then I went to check on Ethan. He was already asleep, one arm around a stuffed dinosaur. I stood in the doorway for a long time. The banking app showed 2 withdrawals from Ethan's college savings account. $22,000 on a Wednesday, $16,000 more 3 days later. The account balance read 0. I read through the numbers twice. I put the phone down and sat there. I didn't have a word yet for what I was feeling. It wasn't exactly anger, not yet. It was more like that moment when you're reading something and you understand every individual word, but the sentence still doesn't make sense, and you go back and read it again, and it still doesn't, and you realize the problem isn't your reading comprehension. The next morning, I called the bank directly. I wanted to speak to a person. A branch representative walked me through the transaction record. My parents had come in person. They had identified themselves as emergency contacts on the account, explained they were managing a family financial emergency on my behalf, and requested both withdrawals directly at the counter. The branch manager, a man who had known my parents for 30 years, approved both transfers without placing a single call to verify with me. I asked for certified copies of everything. She said they'd be ready the next day. After I hung up, I didn't drive to my parents' house. I didn't call Rachel. I opened my laptop, created a new folder on the desktop, and typed in a name for it. Ethan's Money. Then I started filling it. Over the following 2 days, I pulled everything together. The certified bank records came in 2 dates, 2 amounts, the names on the authorization, the name of the manager who signed off. I went back through my email and found the venue's formal cancellation notice sent to Rachel and copied to me citing non-payment and what the manager had described as conduct issues associated with the client account. I saved every text Rachel had sent me since the birthday party. The 4 messages from that first night, the payment portal screenshot the dress photos, all of it with timestamps intact. I printed the email thread with the preschool principal. Then I called a lawyer. Not anyone my family had ever used, no one who'd shaken my father's hand at a Christmas party, no one who would feel the pull of a 30-year banking relationship. A man named David, someone I knew through a work contact, recommended specifically for being methodical and not given to panic. His assistant said Thursday morning worked. I told her I'd be there. I didn't call my sister before I went. I didn't call my parents. I called David. After I left David's office that Thursday afternoon, I made one more call. I rang the venue. I said I was following up on a recent cancellation and needed to confirm a few details. The manager remembered the account immediately. We went through what I needed to confirm. Then, almost as a second thought, I asked whether that particular Saturday had come back open on their calendar. There was a brief pause on her end. It has, she said. I booked it that afternoon. I paid the deposit with my own card. When she asked for the name on the reservation, I gave her my son's name. She asked me to spell it. I did. An hour later, her confirmation email arrived. Ethan's 5th birthday celebration. Same room, same date, same venue. The name on the reservation was my son's. By the following Monday, a formal demand letter had gone out to my parents by certified mail. $38,000 returned to Ethan's college savings account within 30 days, or David would initiate legal proceedings. He had been clear with me about what the records showed: emergency contact status carries no withdrawal rights, that designation exists for the child's safety, not for accessing the child's savings. The branch manager who processed both transfers had violated his own institution's compliance policy. The bank's fraud department had already opened an investigation after I submitted my documentation. The preschool principal had added a written statement about the unauthorized pickup attempt to the file. The paper trail was complete. I received the delivery notification on my phone at 11:04 on a Tuesday morning. I looked at it for a moment. Then I put my phone in my pocket and made Ethan his breakfast. My parents had 30 days to give back what they took. I gave them the full 30. 2 days after the letter arrived, Rachel texted me. Have you had more time to think about the venue situation? The caterer deposit is also coming up. I read it standing at the kitchen counter. She had no idea. My parents had received a legal demand for $38,000 48 hours earlier, and they had not told their daughter. I had 3 choices. I could contact Rachel and explain what was happening. I could reach out to my parents and let them know I knew everything. Or I could say nothing, put the phone away, and let the situation move in its own direction. I put the phone in my pocket. That afternoon, I ordered the decorations, dinosaur balloons, green and orange streamers, a tablecloth with a prehistoric print. I sent updated invitations to the parents of Ethan's preschool friends with the venue address and the correct time. Then I drove to the same bakery and placed the order. 3 tiers. T-Rex on top. Green frosting. Happy birthday, Ethan, in blue letters. That evening, I picked Ethan up from preschool and we had dinner together. He had a very detailed story about a disagreement at lunch involving a juice box and a disputed dinosaur sticker. I listened to the whole thing. Before bed, he asked about the party. I told him it was coming soon. He asked if there would be a T-Rex cake. I told him yes. There would definitely be a T-Rex cake. The morning of the party, I arrived at the venue 2 hours early. Ethan had been awake before 6. He came into my room in his pajamas with his shoes on the wrong feet, asking if it was time yet. I told him we needed to get dressed first. He agreed to this under clear protest. When we walked through the main entrance, the decorating team was finishing up. Dinosaur balloons filled the far end of the room. Green and orange streamers ran the length of the ceiling. In the center of the main table, the T-Rex was already there. 3 tiers, green frosting. "Happy birthday, Ethan," in blue letters. The same cake. The one I'd promised him. Ethan stopped walking. He looked at the table for a long moment. Then, he looked up at me. "Dad," he said, "that's the cake." I didn't say anything. I just watched him run toward it. Guests started arriving around noon. Preschool friends with their parents, people I'd known for years. The people who actually showed up for us. The room filled with the right kind of noise. Ethan had frosting on his face by 12:15 and was explaining the T-Rex's entire backstory to anyone who would stand still long enough. That room on that date was supposed to belong to my sister's wedding. 6 weeks earlier, it had been booked under her name for her event for her 200 guests. Instead, a 5-year-old was running between dinosaur balloons with green frosting on his chin. I won't pretend I felt nothing standing there watching him. But what I felt wasn't triumphant. It was something quieter, something closer to relief. I was aware of exactly when they walked in. My parents came through the entrance first. Rachel was behind them. They stopped just inside the doorway. My father looked at the balloons. My mother looked at the children. Rachel looked at the whole room all at once, and her face moved through several things very quickly. Some of my relatives were already there as guests, aunts, cousins, family friends who had received invitations from me weeks earlier. They were scattered through the room, plates in hand, watching. Rachel stepped toward the seating chart posted near the entrance. She read it. Her name wasn't on it. When she looked up from the chart, she found me across the room. I didn't move toward her. I didn't ask them to leave. She came to me. "What is this?" she said. "Ethan's birthday party." "This is my venue," she said. "This is my date." Was I said. The room had gone noticeably quieter. Not silent, the kids were still moving, but the adults nearby had heard us, and they had stopped their own conversations. "What did you do?" she said. "I got a table," I said. "And I have something for you." I handed her an envelope. She opened it right there. The certified bank records were on top, 2 withdrawal dates. 2 amounts. The names on the authorization and the signature of the branch manager who approved both transfers without contacting me. Behind that was a letter from the bank's fraud department, naming my parents formally as subjects of an active investigation. Then the venue's cancellation notice citing non-payment and conduct issues associated with Rachel's account. Then, Rachel's own text messages. The 4 from the night of Ethan's birthday, the payment portal screenshot with the total, highlighted the message that said, "Family resources, our family resources," all with her name and timestamps. Clearly visible. The last document was the written statement from the preschool principal. David had assembled it in that order deliberately. Her own words at the center of all of it. Rachel read. My parents stood beside her and read over her shoulder. No one spoke. The relatives who had been watching drifted closer. Not because I gestured toward them. Not because anything was announced. The room just contracted the way rooms do when something real is happening in them. When Rachel looked up, I said, "The money needs to be back in Ethan's account by the end of the month. David's contact information is on the cover page." I didn't make a speech. I handed her an envelope and let her read her own words back to herself. "You did this to humiliate me," Rachel said. I looked at her for a moment. "I rebooked a venue that became available after your contract was canceled," I said. "I threw my son a birthday party. You can read the rest of the paperwork at home." I turned back toward the room. Across the party, Ethan had been watching us from a distance with the particular uncertainty of a child who can feel adult tension without understanding it. The second he saw me turn away from the door, he ran. Full speed, the way 5-year-olds run when they're happy and not thinking about anything else. He grabbed my arm and pulled. "Dad," he said, "come see what I did to the T-Rex." I went. I don't know exactly when Rachel and my parents left. I wasn't watching the door. I was on the other side of the room looking at whatever Ethan had done to a plastic dinosaur, and whatever it was made him laugh, and that was enough. The relatives who had been standing near the entrance were still there, the documents visible in my mother's hands. They would draw their own conclusions. They didn't need me to direct them toward anything. The amounts were specific. The dates were exact. The words were Rachel's. Everything that needed to be said had already been said. And none of it had been said by me. The 30 days came and went. On the last day of the window, $38,000 was returned to Ethan's college savings account in a single wire transfer. No note. No apology. Just the number arriving exactly at the deadline, the way people only pay when the alternative becomes real. The bank's fraud department closed its investigation with a formal finding. The branch manager, who approved both withdrawals, was asked to attend an internal compliance review. David sent me a written summary. I filed it in the folder. Rachel and her fiancé were married 6 weeks later. A courthouse ceremony, my parents, and 2 witnesses in attendance. The florist who had warned me didn't provide services. Most of the extended family who had been at Ethan's party sent cards, but didn't go. 3 of them called me separately in the weeks that followed, not to take sides, just to say they had read what was in the envelope, and they understood now. I thanked them and kept the conversation short. I said, I just needed Ethan's money back, because that was true and it covered everything. One of them mentioned that Rachel's social media announcement about the courthouse wedding had received 12 likes and no comments from anyone we both knew. She seemed to be waiting for a reaction from me. I didn't have one particularly. I said good for them, and I meant it in the most uncomplicated way possible. What I keep coming back to isn't any of that. Later that afternoon, after the envelope, after the room had settled, after Ethan had eaten what appeared to be his own body weight in frosting, he was running the full length of the venue with the reckless joy of a child who has no idea how tired he is. Then he stopped. He looked across the room at the center table. The T-Rex was still there, standing guard on top of what remained of the cake. He walked toward it with great purpose. Stopped in front of it. Reached up and gave the dinosaur a slow, deliberate, entirely solemn high five. My whole adult life, I had been the family's safety net. The bigger person. The one who absorbed things quietly so nobody else would have to feel them. I don't know exactly when that changed. Maybe when I found the cake in the trash. Maybe when I named that folder. Maybe when I said was. It doesn't matter. What I know is that it changed. I watched my son high-five a plastic T-Rex, and I thought, this is enough. This is exactly enough.